turn on a little bit. This is a piece of equipment that we use around the region. I said I work for the Southern Plains Climate Hub. We're located here in Oklahoma. We actually cover Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas for USDA, working with primarily agriculture producers, but also rural communities and homeowners on how to better adapt to some of the extreme weather situations that we're seeing as our climate changes and the climate change is exacerbated. What we try to do with this is show how different land treatment and different surfaces. Now, full disclosure, this is the first time we've talked about doing this in an urban setting with some urban surfaces. This is the first time I've ever done it. So if it surprises you, don't worry, it ain't surprising you half as much as it's surprising me right now. But what this does is show how different surfaces react as far as rainfall is concerned. Now, from a climate change perspective, and why it's important to us as far as the issue of climate change is concerned, obviously issues like water and water quality are some of the things as we see our droughts become longer and hotter. As we see our rainfall patterns start to change, we're not necessarily seeing less rain, but it's coming in bigger chunks. So if we can hang on to more of it, if we can make sure that we don't have as much runoff going in and polluting our water supplies, and if we can absorb more of that water into the subsoil surface, it's better for all of us for multiple reasons. And also from an agriculture perspective, I'll throw this out. Traditionally, I would have a plate that would have a plate of tilled land, and then of what's called no-till with cover crops, to show how doing these things absorb more water and control erosion. But they also, the way they do that is by building organic matter. And if you know anything about organic matter, it's roughly 60% organic carbon. And we all learned back in high school biology that plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. If you don't disturb the soil, most of that carbon is sequestered in the form of organic matter in the soil. In fact, in Oklahoma, studies have shown we can reduce as much as a half a metric ton of carbon dioxide per acre per year on agricultural land by doing some of these practices, while we're also burning 3 gallons of diesel less per acre per year on average, according to Oklahoma State, which is putting less emissions in the atmosphere. So we're doing things that help us hold on to more water and control erosion, while at the same time helping address an issue like climate change. Now, I'm going to turn my simulator on here though, and let me tell you what the surfaces that I have. This actually is, I put this together basically to simulate a roof. A wooden, it's a particle board surface, just a surface that you'd see on a covered area. This is actually a gravel pad that you'd see like on a construction site, possibly a warehouse somewhere that, again, it's not paved, but it is an area that's compacted. It is dirt. You'd think it absorbed a little bit, but clearly it's not the same if you have a growing surface. Again, the bricks, a hard surface, whether you're talking about sidewalk, whether you're talking about something on your porch. This is a lawn. It's not as nice as the lawns around here. It's in my hometown at Loyal, but it is a community lot is what it is, where a business has been. It's been compacted, and to demonstrate that. And this is native grass. This is from a pasture that's never been cultivated. It's been part of a pasture since before when the buffalo was on it. It was part of and my family has owned it since right before the land run. And it's never been cultivated. It's been serving as a forage source for livestock. So I'm going to turn our simulator on, and we'll kind of see what's going on with the water.
You might want to be careful.
Might want to stand back a little bit,
Unless you're
a little bit warm and you want to get a little bit of moisture on. As I was telling Mr. Anthony and Mr. Blackburn a little bit ago, we've all had some experience at the state capitol. I put a little story. We had one of these that we carried up to the rotunda of the capitol in 2014 during the middle of the big drought that lasted from 2011 to 2015. The capitol folks might have got a little nervous, but we had to put a containment unit around to make sure that it wouldn't make a mess. But that was kind of a fun demonstration. But what we do with this, we're showing the rain coming on to our surfaces in a way that we normally see in Oklahoma. Stop and think about it. Every once in a while we'll have those nice gentle rains, but more than likely, especially this time of year, our rains are going to come in some pretty violent events. And that's actually what we're seeing with climate change, is that we're seeing what traditionally would have been the 100-year rain is becoming more and more the 50-year rain. And what's the 50-year rain is actually becoming just a bad spring storm. That's one of the phenomenons that we actually are seeing as our climate does change. And the guys with the crystal balls will tell you, as we continue to see some of these things happen, that's going to become more and more the norm. And like I said, there's all that with the corresponding part of that is that the dry times that we have are going to become longer and hotter. So it's extremely important that we hold on to every drop of water that we possibly can. Now, I'm an agriculture producer. I actually live in the North Canadian River watershed. And no offense, guys, but I'm greedy. I want to use every drop of water hits my land before you guys get it, where it runs down that river from Canton Lake to Lake Overholser. Now, the flip side of that is, I don't know about y'all, but my father-in-law, as they said, lives right down the block here. And I know what he spends to irrigate his yard. So if you can do things to hold on to more of that moisture, it's going to help your pocketbook, but it's also going to help the community, because that's less water that's being pulled out of the supply to try to make sure that we're keeping our lawns and gardens healthy if we're doing things to manage your land in a way that's going to help absorb more moisture. Now, if you notice, I've also put some flour on some of these surfaces. Again, this is the first time I've ever done this, so it may work the way I want to or not, but what I'm trying to demonstrate is how these different surfaces, anything that you put on there, especially a hard surface like your roof or like the bricks down here, more than likely that's going to end up running off and going into the street, going into the gutter, and where's it going? Right back into our drinking supply. Now, before you can drink that water, somebody's going to have to treat it. And you know who's paying for the treating that water? You are as ratepayers. So what we can do to try to protect the quality of our water is extremely important, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, you guys with soda pop, somebody's got a cold beer here, I don't know if you've got water in your glass or not, but all that's made with water. Every drop of water that's ever been or will ever be is already here. They're not making any more of it. In fact, the water in that Budweiser Cleopatra may very well bathe in. I'll just be honest with you. It still tastes good, but that's just it. All the water that's ever been and will ever be is already here. That's why it's so important that we take care of it and that we manage that water resource so importantly. The other side of that, talking about the soils down here, and this is for my agriculture audience, I'd really be hitting on this, is the issue of soil erosion. Now, Bob and I were just talking a little bit ago, we were talking about the Dust Bowl and about how the drought actually from 2011 to 2015 was worse than the drought of the 1930s. And we didn't see the return of the dust storms, right? Which is great. I mean, agriculture has made great strides in controlling soil erosion, and that's something we should all be proud of. But even with that good work, on average in Oklahoma, for every pound of wheat we grow, we lose on average 3 pounds of soil. Now you stop to think about that. I mentioned Cleopatra. When that soil started to form, Christopher Columbus was in diapers. When it's gone, it's gone. It's never coming back.
Is it blowing away?
Blowing away, running off as far as these rain events that I'm talking about, especially with the heavier, more violent rain events. You see more soil erosion if you're not doing things to protect that land. We got to feed 9 billion people by mid-century. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We're standing on some of the best farmland in the state of Oklahoma. Just like the best land across the globe is already under asphalt and concrete, because that's where the cities grew up. So we've got to maintain that, not only to make sure that we've got enough food and fiber to feed and clothe the world, but also protecting the bottom lines of farmers and ranchers. Now, let me look at my rain gauge here and see what we've done. That's a pretty good rain. We got about 4.5 inches that's come on there. Let's see what we've done. Now let's look and see here. Obviously this is our roof. Solid, it's sealed. My silicone on the edge of my plywood actually worked pretty good. We didn't have it, we actually had a little bit of leak. Somebody may have to get some spackle and some stain remover out because they got a little bit coming through the roof. But what happened? All that came right down. You see how cloudy that is? Even though that flyer did gum up, a lot of it ended up in that water. And so just imagine that's run into the storm water, that's gone into the gutter, that's gone back into the water supply, and it took with it what was on that roof. So again, having that needs to be, we need to be very mindful about how we manage our solid surfaces. Now, this is dirt and rock, but again, it's compacted. A little bit got through, a little bit went through, but look at that. That's what our runoff is off of our hard pack, and some of that runoff was again some of our flour. The rock slowed it down some, but there's some there. Our bricks, not surprisingly, got a little bit that went through there. You may have to do a little foundation work. You don't have your brick. That's kind of the way I do masonry work too, by the way, so that's, don't be surprised. But then we see our runoff. Again, what was on those bricks has gone straight into the water. So we've got to be mindful. If you're changing oil in your driveway, you're putting down fertilizer, you're putting down herbicides, you just spill household cleaners accidentally out on there. Be very mindful and very careful about how you handle that, because somebody's going to drink. That has to be cleaned up. And that's money out of your pocket as a ratepayer, plus the fact it does impact our available supply of clean drinking water for human and industrial consumption. Now, our yard actually did a lot better than what I thought it would be. Normally on an urban yard, you would have something that would be more similar, quite frankly, to what you saw with this. You would have some infiltration, but most of it's going to end up as runoff. Now, you had quite a bit of runoff, though, that went into your yard. This is our native grass, though. They don't look that much different, do they? But look at that. Almost no runoff at all came off of that native grass. And that's how much water infiltrated. Now, what's the difference between these two pieces right here? Again, you've got compaction. It's been mowed on. I mean, there's been livestock traffic on it, but clearly people going over it with mowers. Been packed down over the years. It's been fertilized. But more importantly on this, you have a monoculture. You have more diversity of your plant species. And one of the things that we found out, if you look in a natural setting, nature doesn't have a monoculture. You don't have blue stem plot popping up somewhere, or a fescue plots popping up somewhere. There's a multitude of species. And what those species do is feed the biological organisms in the soil. The kids are going to talk a little bit about this over here with the flower and water demonstration. But it's building that organic matter. It's helping to build that soil structure. It's having a healthy biological community that actually allows that soil structure to stay in place and allow that water to infiltrate. Plus, we're finding out now, I mentioned I work with the Agricultural Research Service, at least on agricultural land, if you don't have a healthy subsoil microbial community, I tell agriculture producers this all the time. You're not doing things to improve the health of your soil. Do yourself a favor, don't farm. Go down to the creek, take your money out of the bank, start throwing dollar bills in the water, because that's basically what you're doing already. Because 60% of the fertilizer that we put down on our agricultural land like this, is wasted if we don't have a healthy subsoil microbial community, because those bugs, bacteria, and fungi have a symbiotic relationship that's evolved over the eons with the plants that are growing on the surface. They actually take those nutrients, put them into a form that's more available for the growing plants, and the plants in turn feed back simple sugars as part of that carbon cycle that's photosynthesis that also helps us address climate change. So even on your urban lawns, to reduce fertilizer needs, to help take money out of your pocket, plus to help have an excess, keep it from having excess running down the water. You can do things mentioned earlier about native species in your lawns. Things to help improve the health of that subsoil microbial community are key, not just to helping the environment, but helping our bottom lines. I mean, that's important. Obviously, as a farmer and rancher, I'm interested in that to save money, in my operation and help my pocketbook. But I think also as a homeowner that's wanting to reduce the costs that you have in maintaining your landscaping on your home, that's something to be mindful of as well. So that's basically a rainfall simulator demonstration I was talking about. Again, I'd say that these also through photosynthesis are suck and see it. And that's the other thing. When people talk about climate change, I want to push this out real quick. We're talking about nothing but cycles. I referenced the Dust Bowl before. A lot of people I've heard say, and I have to say this, that the climate has always changed, it always will change. They're absolutely correct. And if you go out to the Grand Canyon, it's nothing more than soil erosion that happened over the millennia by the Colorado River. That's all the Grand Canyon is. Erosion is a natural process, always happened. In the 1930s, we knocked that cycle out of balance, sped that natural process up. That's why we got the Dust Bowl. What we've done, quite frankly, is just knocked the carbon cycle out of whack. And with it, we've knocked the water cycle and the nutrient cycle out of whack. Nobody's evil. Nobody wanted to do it. Just one of them things. Same way we addressed the Dust Bowl. We used our head, sat down, looked at the problem, rationally came up with solutions. People still farm and ranch. It wasn't turned into Buffalo Commons. That's still the breadbasket of the world. We turned back the tide of dust, using our heads and thinking about these things rationally. That's the way I kind of think of what we're trying to push at USDA. We can address this in the same way we've addressed these past problems if we just use our heads and not let emotions carry us away. I'll put it that way. So with that, I'm going to let Maddie and Ian, I think. Madeline, is Maddie gone? There she is. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to them, and we're going to set this up and do our bread and flour demonstration.